Okay, now in the room among us sits a great experience, Mr. Nasser KETTANI. He will be our next speaker. He is an information technology expert and he has 30 years of experience in the IT sector. And he is founder and managing director of KETTANI Digital Consultancy, a consulting firm right at the moment. And he spent over 12 years at Microsoft, another Microsoft-oriented speaker. And he has been in various positions, including the Chief Technology Officer for the Middle East and Africa region. He lectured in Daphne University in France on software development. He drafted many articles, and even he has a best-selling book on software design and modeling. It's called Demeris UML. I don't know the pronunciation, sorry, but and right now Mr. KETTANI advises private and public sector institutions through their digital transformation journey. Please welcome on stage Mr. KETTANI. This one.
Digital. So, thank you. It's a real pleasure for me and an honor for me to be here, and thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to be here. Actually, I live in Morocco, so it was easy for me to drive to Marrakesh. So I know for many of you it's the first time, so welcome to Morocco, welcome to Marrakesh. It's not the first time for me, obviously, and believe me, every time I come here, it's really a nice place. So I will answer 3 questions. You know, why is it important to have digital literacy? And the second question I would answer is, who is the target of digital literacy? And how do we organize for it? I want us to sort of understand where we are today. This is the first time in history of humanity where we have many disruptive technologies coming at the same time. It has never happened in the history of humanity before. This is not just about digital, it's much bigger. It's much, 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 much bigger. I want us to realize that this is massive. Everything is being disrupted. And this is because we have massive disruptive technologies here. Anna, I heard the issue you have with your car. Actually, in probably a few years, probably a year or so, you will not have to pay your parking here. Actually, your car will do it for you when you park it. You don't even have to download an app and do it for you, right? I don't know if you realize, but this year, we had, for the first time, we had a computer print another computer that actually drives itself. This is the first time where we have a car which is connected, self-driving car being printed using 3D printer, which is another computer. This is massive. This is just massive in terms of what's going on in the industry. And it's important to understand. So the second thing that is really happening is there are companies who are disrupting other companies by using this disruptive technologies because they understand them. They understand deeply to the point that they really disrupt what's going on in the industry. Every organization is going through that. Okay, this is also important to realize. I mean, I put there some names, and and even companies such as GE is disrupting. Google has disrupted the advertising business completely, and other stuff. And others. So I'm not going to go into the details of that. Now, here is the bad news for you. And this is why it's important that we take action now. We are into an exponential growth of disruption of technology and evolution of technology. What happens is that in this century, we're not moving ahead as one century. Actually, the progress we're going to make is the equivalent of 20,000 years. And the issue that we have is that we are still educating our kids the same old way without realizing that we have to go fast. Let me tell you, at the end of this discussion that we will have today, we will probably with the pace of innovation that's happening, we will probably make another year of progress. Just in the few minutes that we're talking here. Massive stuff happening. Big acceleration. And the issue is we're not prepared as a society to deal with that. Let me say this. Every company that you know of, every company will become a software company or die, period. Every company, small and big. Because every business will be transformed through technology and specifically through software. Specifically through software. Whether we're talking about financial services, healthcare, education, agriculture, transportation, you name it. Everyone will have to become a software business and good at software, otherwise they just have go and die because somebody else will come and just take them away. And that's what's happening. So let me just to set the scene. So as I was preparing for this, I said, so who should be trained on digital literacy? So I take this example of this accident that everybody was talking about, which is an Uber car, driverless, killed somebody in the road. It's an accident, it's dramatic, obviously, etc. People a lot are talking about it. And to the point that sometimes like, oh, it's dramatic, it's an accident. But actually, this car is probably safer than how we drive. We tend to forget about it. Probably tens of thousands of people dying every year around the world, not just one, right? Now, the question is, when you see this headline, it says, experts say it could have avoided. Now, the question is, who's the expert? And when I start to talk about it, it's like, okay, well, of course, there are the car experts, but in this case, we need to have lawyers understand what's going on. Otherwise, they cannot defend the case. We need to have the judge, they understand what's going on in the car. Otherwise, he will not be able to, in the court, to discuss it, right? And probably the prosecutor. And probably the car manufacturer. And you name it, right? Probably people in the jury understand, what the hell are they talking about? Why? Because that car was driverless. So who made the error? Why did this accident happen? Was it a software design problem? And which software? Is it Uber? Or perhaps the technology just was coming from somebody else doing that? So that's a very simple example, but that shows that actually everybody tomorrow has to understand how these things work. Your doctor tomorrow will not operate the same way as he does today. Why? Because he will use robots, he will use big data, he will use so many different technologies in order to operate and to make diagnoses. If he doesn't understand how these things work, he will do a bad job. Your lawyer, your accountant, everybody. And the question for us is, how do we educate everybody? It's not about just developers. It's not about us in our interactions. So to some extent, we actually have solved the problem of exponential technologies. We're growing technology fast, but we are not growing organizations, we're not growing skills fast enough. That's the challenge that we have. That's the biggest challenge that we have in society. And let me tell you, we're talking about gaps, in digital gaps. Few numbers, but just Europe came up recently with something called the GDPR. You probably heard about it, right? Which is data protection regulation. It's interesting, but this regulation says, listen to this, it says every company in Europe, and not only in Europe, but at least in Europe, must have a data protection officer. Every company in Europe must have, it's by the law, it's by the regulation, you need to have a data privacy officer. This is about 20 plus million companies in Europe. Do you think we have 20 plus million data protection officers today? What a missed opportunity. We've been talking about this for years. We're not even prepared. Nobody did the work to actually prepare to get 20 million jobs there. So we have a big gap. Another example, in cybersecurity, PwC estimate that we have today, in 2 years, we will have a 2 million job gaps in cybersecurity experts. And I can go on and on. Here's another number. GE, I mentioned GE, General Electric. This year, GE will hire data scientists. You know how many they will hire? They will hire, in volume, the full capacity of the data scientists coming out from US universities. Just one company. And guess what? Google wants them. Microsoft wants them. Facebook wants them. Amazon wants them. Tesla wants them. All of them want them. And they go all around the world, trying to get these smart guys, et cetera, because there is a short gap. We're not training. We're not building the capacity that is required. So what happens is examples like Google of, stepping up and others. I took another example which I found interesting. So I took it just to illustrate what I'm trying to. Obviously, this has nothing to do with. But the point is, in France, Microsoft announced a program to train people on AI. It's like, okay, so this is a headline, okay? So I tried to read the headline, and I went on just searching. So this is in one country and one company, okay? And it's interesting that it's coming from private sector, not, only public sector, okay? Now we're training only for 24 students, which is like small, right? So how do you scale this? It's a great initiative, but come on, 24, are you serious? And we're spending, And then the issue is, this is coming from Microsoft customers. Microsoft customers, existing and partners say, we need them. We don't have them. So this is a company hiring not for themselves, not training for themselves, but actually training for their customers, which is even worse. Who need AI skills. And then they partnered with a company called Simplon. So they're not doing this alone, which is an interesting NGO. They do an amazing stuff. And then, oops, this is not moving. Yeah. Here is the other thing. The people that are training, they are training, they have an average of 26, so they're young. But the good stuff is, they're even, some older people coming from a diverse group of expertise. Many of them are unemployed. So they're not taking the best developers in the world and train them to AI, right? Even people who are not developers. Actually, this lady is coming from the oil industry in Cameroon, and she had specific knowledge. We have a former school teacher in the group. Very young, etc. We have coders and so forth. So the question here is, it shows that when we want to teach even sophisticated technologies that people are talking about, like AI, we don't need to have the best developers in the world to learn AI. We can train other people to do, something and to go through the program, right? So it's possible. And the reason I took this example is because it illustrates that something is broken, fundamentally broken. A company like Google, like Microsoft, stepping up, fixing a problem of the education system, which is weird. And it's happening all around the world, by the way. This is happening in France. Google experience happening all around the EU, in Turkey. I know of examples of Microsoft Morocco doing some crazy things here, working with government. It's just unbelievable. So for me, my recommendation is, as I think about digital literacy, and for the reasons I mentioned, this is not an issue of specific people, of a specific target. This is an issue of everybody, because as I said, doctors, lawyers, developers, scientists, you name it, have to understand deeply how technology works in order to be able to do their job tomorrow. And actually, even perhaps, other things. So we need to start now, right? And really reform our education system to make sure that we actually include digital skills, programming, and other things into K-12 university for, really for all. Or probably need to look into our vocational training. We have many countries who have vocational training programs, et cetera, and institutions, and they also need to focus heavily on digital skills, especially for unemployed people, because as the example we've seen in the case of Microsoft France, they've been able to address that, even on sophisticated technologies like AI. And the other thing is, obviously, this is not the job of one hand. It goes without saying that this is between government, private sector, and NGOs that need to fix the problem together. But we need to start now. We just, not tomorrow, but now. Thank you.